Hello there folks, thanks for tuning in. My name is Paul Tabram and this is going to be the first in a series of videos that I'll be making which look at the philosophy of aesthetics. So just so you know, I'm a film scholar by profession, but I've had a long-standing interest in what philosophers have said about aesthetic experience. So I thought in the process of researching it I would make a series of web videos as well. So if you decide to stick with me, then this will be as much a process of discovery for me as hopefully it'll be for you. So when I talk about aesthetic experience, then I'm not just referring to our engagement with artworks, but anything that we can attend to in an aesthetic way, like landscapes, people, animals, food, clothing, furniture, and so on. When I talk about what philosophers have said about aesthetic experience, there's a whole host of different topics that they've engaged, things like value, personal taste, humour, evolutionary theories of art, morality in artworks. So what I'm going to do then is offer a kind of concise overview of these various topics. So they're not going to be entirely exhaustive, but rather it'll give you a sense of what philosophers have said on these various topics, and then if you want to take it further with your own research, you're welcome to. In every video I'm going to include a link in the description of where I got the information from. So in this one, for example, where I'm looking at beauty, the ideas come principally from a lecture that was recorded by a prominent philosopher of aesthetics called Jerrold Levinson, and his original lecture, which goes into more detail, is available online. So that's linked in the description then. Okay, so without any further ado then, I'll talk about the first question I want to ask in this clip, which is, what is beauty? So we'll start with a distinction then, because it's one that if you're talking about beauty and you don't make this distinction at the beginning, then it can lead to confusion further on down the line. There's two different ways in which you can use the word beauty. One is that beauty can be understood as a specific aesthetic property relating to pleasure, harmoniousness, something that's pleasing to behold or to look at or to hear. And then there's another meaning by which we use the word beauty, and that is general aesthetic excellence or accomplishment, if you like. So if you look at a work of art somebody made, and you think it's well made or produced with a sort of masterly quality to it, then you can call it beautiful. That use of the word is okay as long as you recognise that it isn't the same as referring to some specific aesthetic property. So the first meaning I was talking about, something that in a traditional sense is beautiful. So that's to say then that some appealing works of art or natural scenes don't necessarily display beauty in the traditional sense. There may be other kinds of valuable properties or qualities. For example, Witch's Sabbath by Goya, or Francis Bacon's famous study after Velázquez's portrait of Pope Innocent X. Right? In terms of general excellence, you can say that these are beautiful works of art because they're well made, they're inspired, and they're potent. So these sorts of artworks then possess a power, a kind of disturbing quality that is satisfying to come into contact with. You can say that they're beautiful, but you're referring to a sort of broader artistic excellence rather than saying you're encountering something beautiful in the same way you might if you saw a painting by William Clark Wantner, for example. This one's called An Elegant Beauty, as it happens. So the focus today is on the first of these two meanings of the word then. Beauty is a specific aesthetic property rather than a general expression of artistic excellence. Let's ask a question then. How objective or subjective is beauty? You can ask it like this. If an artwork is described as beautiful, is that beauty an objective property of the artwork, or is beauty the name of a reaction that people have to the artwork? So in other words, is the beauty in the thing that's beautiful, or is it just your reaction that's an experience of beauty? So the same goes for other beautiful things that aren't artworks but can be described as beautiful. You can say a person is beautiful, or a landscape, a meal. You might look at that and go, what a beautiful meal, or a beautiful cat. Is the beauty in the cat itself, or is that just our reaction to the cat? If beauty is an objective property, we can call it an intrinsic property that somehow resides inside the thing and is still beautiful when considered in isolation. Or the beauty might be extrinsic, or what you call a relational property, whose beauty can only be understood in the context of people coming into contact with it. In this sense, then, beauty isn't in itself in the object, but it characterizes our reaction to it. What is this distinctive power of beautiful objects then? Or what is this reaction that people can experience which causes them to comment, this is a beautiful thing? To answer these questions, we can start building an idea of what beauty might be by asking ourselves what we intuitively know about it. First then, we can say that beauty has something to do with the senses. Beauty is something about how the senses can be affected. Unless stated otherwise, it's generally assumed that beauty refers to the visual. There are other kinds, of course, like musical beauty or poetic beauty. But we initially think of artworks, jewellery and things outside of that, such as people, flowers and nature, as being beautiful when you talk about beauty. We can also think about beauty in relation to pleasure. So if pleasure is connected to the aesthetic, that is because the aim or goal of aesthetic attention, at least in part, is to derive pleasure from our engagement with whatever it is that we're paying attention to. Beauty, in a sense, is the prize then, is where that attention succeeds, if you like. So you can say that the aesthetic is the realm in which you're searching for this prize, although you may not find it, if indeed you don't find the object beautiful. And beauty is the prize. You can attend to something aesthetically hoping to find beauty or some other aesthetically valuable property and not succeed, but beauty is a success, right? Thus it leads to the experience of pleasure. We can also say that beauty is connected to the feeling of attraction. One obvious connection is that of human beauty, of course, and the idea that human beauty and attractiveness are closely related. Someone strikes you as attractive and you're drawn to them, you want to be with them. But there are other kinds of attraction too. For example, if you see an ornament in a shop that strikes you as beautiful, you may wish to possess it. I for example, encountered this object in a pottery store, liked it very much. It was outside of my price range, but I still desired it. I still, wanted to possess it. It eventually came down in price and I was able to pick it up. So that's desire then. Perfection is also connected to the idea of beauty. So a thing is beautiful insofar as it is perfect. That's to say, it is an exemplary instance of its kind, a perfect flower, a perfect dog, a perfect piece of music. If you add anything to it or take anything away, you would lessen its perfection. There is also some connection between beauty and happiness. When you bear witness to beauty, to state the obvious, it would make you feel happy. Just note that beauty is not a necessary condition for happiness. If, for example, someone gives you a pile of money and you're looking at the money, this will make you feel happy, not because it's aesthetically beautiful, but because you look at it and think of all the nice things you can buy with it, right? Nonetheless, beauty can also bring happiness, but we can take this idea a step further. Now, Edmund Burke, an 18th century philosopher, famously claimed that beauty is the promise of happiness, right? This has been accredited to Edmund Burke. It's also been accredited to the 19th century French writers Stendhal. So I don't know who really said it. If they both said it, then Edmund Burke would have done first, because he was around before Stendhal. But there you go. What is distinctive about beauty for Burke, and I guess Stendhal, is that it goes beyond pleasurable appearance and points towards some sort of ideal of self-improvement or self-transcendence. We can say then that, according to one line of thought, beauty simply points towards happiness, which is pleasing, but another line of thinking has a more kind of elevated image or conception of beauty as pointing towards self-improvement or self-transcendence somehow. Let's make two more distinctions between different traditions put forward by Jerrold Levinson in his lecture on beauty. We can call one the hedonic formal tradition. In this tradition, Immanuel Kant was the main theorist and Arthur Schopenhauer followed on from him. And hedonic, of course, is related to the word pleasure, as in, a person's a hedonist, then they just want to experience pleasure. The essence of beauty is simply that it brings pleasure. Another tradition put forward earlier than that, originally by Plato and then later by Plotinus, I think it's Plotinus, not Plotinus, and later Nietzsche, can be termed the erotic eudaimonic tradition. Here the essence of beauty is not pleasure in the form or appearance of a thing, but in the fact that you're attracted to that thing. So that's the erotic aspect then. You want to draw near the thing, possess it, or unite with it somehow. So in this instance then, when you talk about erotic, you're not just talking about sexuality, although that's a part of it, but rather the kind of sense that something's drawing you towards it. Right? For Kant then, in the hedonic tradition, the pleasure tradition, we simply enjoy a perceptual experience for its own sake, enjoy the appearance of things. So there's pleasure involved, but it's a kind of disinterested pleasure, not for any practical use or satisfaction that you can use for yourself. In the erotic eudaimonic tradition, there is no disinterested pleasure in form. The essence of beauty here is that it makes you want to possess it. So a name for this feeling, this desire to possess, as Levinson puts it, is love. You love a beautiful object and you want to possess it or commune with it somehow. So there's no widely agreed answer between these two traditions, which is right, or whether they're mutually compatible, but these are the main ideas. If I understand these ideas correctly, then both seem compatible to me. So, for example, I have two little boys. I'm a father, and I like asking my friends who have children how their kids are getting on. I'll ask to see photos and I'll look at them and I'll coo over them, but I have no desire to raise them as my own. So there's no desire to possess on that part. Likewise, if I hear a song I consider to be beautiful, I don't want to unite with it, so to speak. I'm happy to share it with others. This is unlike human beauty. If, say, you start dating somebody or you marry them, then you don't want to share them. So in a sense, that is uniting. So that's different to hearing a good piece of music. Another interconnected topic related to beauty is that of the sublime. Now, there was a book titled On the Sublime, which was written in the 1st century. It's been disputed who the original author was. It first raised the issue of the sublime, and years later, the philosophers Kant, Schopenhauer, and Edmund Burke explored the difference between beauty and the sublime. The difference was an important development on the romantic sensibility, or romantic aesthetic, which began in the 18th century and ran to about the mid-19th century. Before that was the classical period, and before the classical period was the Baroque. So in some senses, the Baroque and the Romantic were more alike than the classical and the Romantic. So for classical art, then, beauty is the highest ideal. But for the Baroque and the Romantic periods, the sublime was considered an artistic ideal. So the sublime then is something we find satisfaction with, yet it doesn't have the central features of beauty, such as pleasure in the hedonic tradition, or love, passion and desire in the erotic eudaimonic tradition. Rather, there is something almost negative in the sublime, like fear, tension or awe. What produces feelings of the sublime? Kant talked about the vast heavens, for example, things in nature that have overwhelming power, like a hurricane or a thunderbolt or a big grizzly bear. 19th century artists sought to express the sublime through nature with paintings like Wander Above the Sea of Fog by Caspar David Friedrich, or the John Martin painting Great Day of His Wrath. Right? These attempted to express the sublime and evoke that feeling in the audience. So there is a kind of satisfaction to encountering the sublime, but at its core is something unsettling, threatening, or disturbing. Yet we get some kind of pleasure from contemplating these things. So beauty is one of the supreme aesthetic properties then, but it's not the only one. There's also the sublime, and there's other properties like grace, elegance, boldness, and unity, all of which can be connected to beauty, but they're not exactly the same thing. Another distinction we can make is between free beauty and dependent beauty. So when an object can be appreciated by virtue of its free beauty, this means that you appreciate its pure formal qualities. You don't need any specialist knowledge to recognize its virtues. You can just look at it and recognize its beauty. Dependent beauty means that something is a beautiful example of whatever it is. So this is a beautiful example of a flower, as a tractor, as a building, or as an artwork. When you find an artwork beautiful, you find it beautiful as an artwork, and an artwork of a particular kind, so a Byzantine artwork or a Renaissance painting or whatever it is. The same goes for particular kinds of artwork. You find it beautiful as a symphony or as a poem. This could depend on your own specialist knowledge. If you're a flower specialist, you can appreciate the dependent beauty of its flowerness, or a cat for its catness, in a way that non-specialists can't. I'm struck by some, cat prize winners when they do these, shows. You see these bizarre-looking cats winning best cat in show. Some of them look very odd to me, but of course I'll concede that the judges of these things have devoted far more of their lives to learning about cats and finding out how to appreciate them, so I'll cede to their authority. One more thought before I wrap up. I've been talking mainly about perceivable beauty, but beauty is not limited to the sphere of the senses, since poems and written stories may also be considered beautiful, and they aren't perceivable in the same way a painting or a movie or a piece of music are perceivable. So there is such a thing as a kind of imperceivable beauty. There's also something like Euler's equation, which has been described as beautiful, or a person's character or personality can also be described as beautiful. When discussing human beauty, there's also a form which emanates from within that is different to traditional notions of youthful beauty. So traditionally then, things like symmetry, smoothness of skin, or averageness of features are deemed beautiful. That's not average in a kind of, conventional sense, but rather the various proportions are average. It seems to me that one can manifest a different kind of beauty which only comes over time through one's experiences, life and hardship. Somebody ages over time and they come out of it kinder or wiser, and that can emanate from within, and that's a slightly different thing to the kind of, conventional notions of youthful beauty. Okay, so that's it for now. Thanks a lot for watching. Feel free to like, comment and subscribe, and I hope to see you for the next one. Okay, bye for now.